eventually.
We need to start. It's 10:42. I'm going to be in big trouble.
Right, come on then.
That's what we aim for.
Yeah, I'll just have to leave. I'll have to explain why this.
No, explain nothing. There's no time. We started recording too late to explain things. Hello there, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Football Manager Therapy. I am your host, Rich Owens, and joining me this week, we have two of my closest pals in the entire universe. We have Callum, and we have Jeb. Callum, how are you, pal?
Feels weird to be up here. Weird to be up here. First of all, before we go any further, elephant in the room. Kev, we have. I know we touched upon it last week. We haven't done it in our full capacity here. I'm in Kev's spot up here. I feel like it's my responsibility. We miss you, Kev. We hope you're well. And obviously, we're still swimming in all the circles, and I'm sure you two are the same. He's been messaging back and forth, but there's a Kev-shaped hole this week, isn't there? So it's a slightly solemn one. But I'm good, thank you. I am good. I'm had a busy week. I'm on my summer holidays at the moment from school, so I thought I'd have all this free time, and I don't have any free time. Turns out small children take it all away. But it's been fun regardless, and it's I'm good, thanks, Rich.
Good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, welcome to the world of parenting. You are now busy for the next 17 years.
Perfect.
Just so you know. So if you just take that into consideration anytime you want to do literally anything. Yeah, good. Like Jeb, how are you, pal?
I'm all right. I've got a notepad when I have to make notes, just rather than writing.
Good.
Yeah.
I have a dad joke book.
Yeah. Oh, well
I've got
yeah, I'm all right. Rich, if you like to gamble, I tell you I'm your man. Just so you know, you win some, lose some. It's all the same to me.
Not too much.
No, exactly.
Copyright strike.
Yeah,
copyright strike.
Yeah. Stop there. I miss Kev dearly. I did send him some gifts. It was under the pretense of a gift being sent by a certain football management game company, sending me a gift as well. He also sent me the wrong address, which was quite hilarious.
So good.
It's like you trolling me. Are you trolling me, Kev? That's my job. I do that, not you. You're the nice guy. And then you realise he just mistyped. But yeah, I sent him a signed picture of Roy Keane to remind him of the network save.
Oh,
so we got a little plaque with Roy Keane on there. Yeah. I've not played much FM. I've seen a lot of real life FM. That's been quite fun. I don't have small children, so. Congratulations!
Yep. It's a choice. I was about to say the correct choice, but I love you both. They're out there somewhere.
That's a different podcast altogether.
That's a very very different podcast. Very very different podcast. Yeah, it's true. I think my favorite aspect of the sad set of circumstances surrounding Kev obviously making the decision to take a step back was the fact that I think we've rubbed off on him enough over the last nearly 2 years that when we asked him for something like his address, the place that he lives, he got it completely wrong. We all looked at it and we're like, Kev giving us the wrong address here. We're like, no, clear. He wouldn't do that. He absolutely wouldn't. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So that's our. It's our legacy, really. I like to think.
We're going to put his correct address in the podcast description.
Yeah. Kev's correct address is in the description, so you can all go around to his house.
Yeah,
and he lives at.
Did you hear D-Boy and David Nihill went round to his house?
Yes, I did.
Stole our idea. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Who do they think they are? Absolutely. Yeah, just can't just go round to Kev's house.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently you can. No, apparently you can.
Yeah. Well,
and,
it's what,
and you can as well because the address, as we say, anyone pop round.
So it's on Patreon. Kev's address is on Patreon. Sign up. There's £1 subscriptions left on the Patreon. Just sign up to Patreon and get Kev's address. That's how it works.
There's a 7-day free trial as well. Right,
7-day free trial of getting to live at Kev's house.
Can I preface it? Please do not give us money. You actually aren't going to get his address. I don't want anyone to now go on.
No, I'm going to contradict you there, Callum. Please do give us money, but you're also not going to get Kev's address. So I think there's the balance.
You subscribe to the £50 Kev's address tier. So,
Yes, £50 Kev's address tier. It's coming. Kev, if you're listening to this, Kev, there's now a £100 don't give out Kev's address tier. So again, we're going to make it work somehow. We are going to make it work somehow. Interesting, isn't it, as well, that Kev wouldn't give us his correct address, but would give it to a stranger from a different country. So again, it's hard to tell who he likes more, really, isn't it? I think it's David Nyholm.
It does seem that way, yeah.
It does seem like it's David Nyholm.
He is very nice, but also
he is
that
very
elbow
nice.
thing.
Yeah, what was that?
David Nyholm can lick his own elbows. If you don't know David Nyholm is a Twitch streamer from Denmark. He's a lovely young man. He's everybody's mod, and he can lick his own elbows. For the audio listeners, that was the sound of Callum trying to lick his own elbow.
I couldn't do it.
He couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Nor can anybody normal. But David has that skill set. We could lick each other's elbows, but I don't want to.
Once again, different podcast.
Very, very different podcast. We're branching out. We're creating the FMT.
On the
more Patreon content.
£200 tier, yeah?
£200 tier. We will lick each other's elbows. So many tiers. Look, we've had a hiatus. We've assessed the business model, and clearly it's licking each other. That's what the podcast has been missing. Huge amounts of that, and probably competent Football Manager based conversations, but those are subjective.
Oh, that is why we're here. I was wondering why we're all together.
That is one of the reasons that we're here. We should probably do our best to have a little conversation about it, I suppose. Well, while the three of us together.
That's me diving into the conversation.
That was you diving in.
Really good for audio podcast listeners. I never do physical comedy. I don't know why you
No, physical comedy is colossally overrated.
And
based on that dive.
And Kev always supported me in my physical comedy.
It's like, go on, Callum, you can do it. You know what this podcast needs more of, Callum? Mime. There you go.
I agree.
That's nothing weird is happening on Jeb's screen. At the moment.
Nothing's happened on Jeb's screen.
It's just Kev the cat. It's fine.
Right. Oh, okay. We've rebranded Mr. Jebbles. Excellent. It was inevitable. Right. Football Manager. Have you played it recently? Not very much. Previously, quite a lot. Callum posed a really interesting question to us in the build-up to this podcast. Callum, would you like to ask us the question, because it is your question?
Sure. So it's a long question in some ways, and in other ways it's a very short one. And in other ways it feels like I'm just making things up as I scroll back to my question in the Discord. And it's basically your style or your philosophy. Do you have one in Football Manager? So I'll start off with what I mean behind that. So when I used to play Football Manager, in a very basic sense, if I joined a football team, I would look at the team, I'd look at the best players, I'd put them in my team, and I'd play Football Manager. And that was always how I did it. So if I had a team of giants, that's how I'd play. If I had a team with really technical, passing players, that's how I'd play as well. And I'd also adapt perhaps to the league that I was in with regards to that. Whereas I feel like there's a strand of FM where you can create your own style and you can create a way that you want to play. So you're buying players to fit that philosophy a little bit more like real management. So I suppose the question to both of you and to the wider community is, do you create a philosophy? Do you create a style? And if so, what is it? But if not, why not? Why not? So I'm going to start by asking Jeb.
Oh,
what was the question? I was too busy.
I'll say it again. So basically,
I was quite traditional. I do have a style that I play. It's 4-2-3-1 gegenpress. Just plug it in and go. Yeah, no. To be fair, I do use a lot of that, and I've used especially the last couple of iterations. I'm going back to Champ Manager 2 days, and I used to play a 4-4-2, and your two wingers would be up, and then you get your two wingers, and you play with the arrows, and the arrows would be straight up, and that's what they do. So that's kind of what I want to play. The issue is playing two up front just seems to be not very meta anymore. It's occasionally you play it against smaller teams, so that's usually where I go with it when I do bring it back in. But most of the times it is a variation of 4-3-3 with either two wingers out wide, three in the middle, and I actually do like to play like a flat three in the middle, and then have just a defensive midfielder and then two creatives either side. That's kind of where the style goes. I've always never worked the ball into the box. That's something I'm really against. I like a big meaty target forward up front or a pacey forward. We can alternate between the two. I like the ball to be passed around. I don't like the ball to be hit direct, which kind of counteracts the target forward. God, what have I done? I've got this all wrong, haven't I? I don't like the time waste. There's lots of like philosophies that I go with, but I always play my style with the teams that I get rather than the style of the team, and I never adapt to the team that way. Maybe that's why I've been rubbish this year. Might explain a few things. Yeah, like I said, I want to. I played a lot more with different roles and different ways of playing this year, I think. But when it comes down to it, I'll always end up with a 4-3-3, and then if I'm going attacking, I'll go 4-2-4. So you push your wingers a little bit higher.
So Jeb, with regards to that, if you were comparing yourself to a Premier League manager, so I feel like Premier League managers, a lot of them have got like specific styles. The two managers, one of them isn't a Premier League manager anymore, but the two managers I put in the chat to sort of go, a clear style was Pep Guardiola and Tony Pulis. Like
four big centre backs at the back. Yeah,
so exactly. Identical managers. Yeah. But I think because they both, if you say those managers, what you're going to get. If Tony Pulis was managing Man City and Pep Guardiola was managing Stoke, they would be playing in a very different way. And so is there anyone who sort of comes to mind for you that you feel like you would sort of be similar to?
In terms of, I think I put a lot of pressure on. I think it does come down to it. I watch a lot of Liverpool, surprisingly. Mm-hmm. They won 3-0 last night against Manchester United. It was glorious, apparently. But I think pushing the Klopp philosophy, the gegenpress, maybe not as high on the press, because I get very frustrated at fatigue, like ridiculously frustrated when you get to like January. It's like these players need a rest, and the list of players actually doesn't fit on the screen because there's that many of them. So I think I would like to style my play on that. It's difficult to do with the fatigue side of things and the rotation, particularly as you go in the lower leagues when you've got to play 455 games a week. So yeah, I think Klopp is probably somewhere I'd probably push towards. I think obvious styles, like you said, I think you've got Pep, you've got Tony Pulis. People say Sam Allardyce was a long ball merchant. He actually wasn't. He played various different styles. Definitely nothing like Jose Mourinho. He might be the special one, but I've never been one to sit back. Never been one to sit back and just kind of go, right, we're going to win 1-0. I'll be happy with that. That is boring.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think the game naturally pushes you towards. You joked about the gegenpress, but like the Klopp style, I think in a lot of ways, FM does sort of say, you know what, high pressing and putting them under a lot of pressure does get you success. And I think for like quite a lot of iterations of the game, I was similar. I think it was very much like, right, what's the correct way to play FM? It's to play high press. It's a high tempo. Everything's done very, very quickly. And I've got pace and I'm going to attack them. And it's definitely a style that gets a lot of success on the game, I think. But it is an interesting one. So, Rich, over to you, sir.
What was that?
Tennis.
That was
it was tennis. I smacked it over the net. Yeah.
There you go. For the audio listeners, Callum did tennis. It's an interesting one, wasn't it? I think picking up on some of the points Jeb made there before we talk all about me, because realistically, that's what it's all about. I don't think that FM lends itself to defensive football. Realistically speaking, I think if you try to replicate a Mourinho style tactic where you just sit players back, I think allowing teams onto you in FM, I think it's very, very rare that, in my experience, trying to come up with defensive tactics, defensive systems, it's very rare in my experience that they're particularly effective. And as much as we joke about this, I like to think that especially over the last few FMs where I've sunk even more and more time into it, I like to think that I've got a comparatively decent understanding of how to get the best out of teams these days. And, you know, even when you try and set up defensively, it's not always, it's very, very rare that, you know, if you try and kill a game off in the last 20 minutes by switching to a very, very defensive style, even if it's one that your team has been trained in, giving teams the opportunity to come onto you and press you and attack, I think that the game favors the more attacking side of the game now than it does the defensive. So that's a much harder style to replicate in Football Manager. You know, if you wanted to go the full Mourinho, you're going to have a more difficult time of replicating that on screen than you are if you wanted to go out, you know, just full on gung-ho attacking. So it's a more difficult thing to do. If there are people out there that have really, really effective defensive tactics, let us know, because I'd be really interested to have a little look at them, see what it is that makes them work, and maybe have a little play around with them. But for me, it's more about the attack. In terms of how I set up and in terms of how I do it, I suppose this year it's changed a lot for me, because I think previously I was very much like yourself, Callum. You know, you go to a club, you figure out who the best players are, and you build around them. And again, going back to my very, very early, you know, FM days, even my Champ Manager days, my little dalliances with the LMA Manager on the consoles in the mid to late 2000s, I always really liked like a 4-1-2-1-2. So just, you know, just one attacking midfielder and one specifically defensive midfielder, because in my head that gave a team really, really good balance, because you had like a Claude Makelele sat in front of you, your back four, mopping everything up. You had wingers that could, you know, get the yellow arrows up there, get them bombing forwards, an attacking midfielder to link it all together, and two strikers, because if you've got two strikers, you've got double the chance of scoring goals than you've got one striker, because that's maths. That was always my go-to. And then I tried to implement it on, you know, later Football Managers. Or say later, you know, comparatively later than the LMAs, and it didn't really work as well. And then it gets you thinking. And then, like I say, you slip into your comfort formations, don't you? Like your 4-2-3-1, your Gengham presses, because it works and it's effective. The last couple of years, and I think this year especially, with my save on stream, I set myself a rule for each club that I went to, that every club I had to come up with a new system, because I didn't want to have one that I just relied on that could carry me through. When I did Scandinavia last year, I had a really effective 4-2-3-1. Wasn't quite Gengham press. It definitely had some elements of it, but it was effective, and it pretty much carried me through the entirety of the save. Whereas this year, every club I've gone to, I've tried to make it different, and it's kind of combining that, the system of, you know, what have we got here that works? What can we take advantage of at each club? But also, how do I want this club to set up? Like, you know, we started in Japan with a 4-4-2, because that's what Japanese football was screaming out for. Classic 4-4-2 football with a 40-year-old Quagliarella up front. Makes complete sense, doesn't it? You know, you go to, you know, I went to France, and I was like, okay, this needs a little bit more defensive stability. So you start to incorporate more centre backs into the team, but it's still that DNA. Like I say, it's that DNA, it's that managerial style. I like short passing. I like a slightly higher tempo. I will always, from goal kicks, distribute to fullbacks. I will never do anything else, because I think it's the most effective way of moving the ball out of defence. I hate long goal kicks. We've talked about this on FMT a lot over the last couple of years. I cannot get performances out of target forwards. I'm physically incapable of doing it. No matter how much I want to, no matter how much I love the concept, I can't get them to work in my systems. So I just won't incorporate them. If I see a goalkeeper who kicks the ball more than, you know, 20 yards from a goal kick, I get angry. I get genuinely cross. I'm like, what is he doing? I've got nobody tall enough to win that header. Behave yourself. I've had this conversation before. I've really enjoyed the process of getting to know new clubs, getting to understand what it is about those clubs that makes them, you know, has made them work. I think especially with the save that I've got, I'm coming into clubs that haven't necessarily been successful recently, be it over the last, you know, season, you know, 2 or 3 years, whatever it's been, and also trying to work out why that's been, you know, trying to figure out why it hasn't been working tactically for this team. Like my Dortmund side at the moment, I've walked in and I'm like, well, they've got 3 or 4 of the best young players in the game. Why are they struggling so much? And they were conceding goals. So we tightened it up at the back. We had to bring in new players, you know, tried to bring in some big lads, but it's still, you know, there's still the core of it is still there. Things like, you know, I will still distribute the ball to the fullbacks. I won't go long. shorter passing, slightly higher tempos. Sometimes, I'll trigger a press occasionally if I'm feeling spicy. Those things have been comparatively consistent with all the systems and all the tactics that I've set up. There's a really lovely guy who hangs out on my chat quite a lot. His name's Terry, and Terry, will quite often comment about, Rich Owen style football. And the first few times he did it, I was like, oh, he's just being nice. He's just being polite, and he's just trying to contribute something to the stream. But then you actually dig into it a little bit more, and you start looking at the systems that I've had with previous clubs, and I've looked at a couple of them as Jeb was having a chat about it there. The core of them, or there's still 3 or 4 core things that are still the same across all of them. I guess that constitutes as a consistent brand of football, even though it's different systems. I suppose it's still got to work, in the sense of, it still has to be appropriate for your team. Again, I like fullbacks on defend are something that I use quite a lot of as well. So I'm not necessarily fussed about the size of my fullbacks. I'm not going Pep Guardiola, like, right, 6'2" centre back, right, let's just stick him out on the left hand side. Why not? That'll probably work. That's less important to me, because then I'll try and bring in bigger centre backs. Because if I've got bigger centre backs, generally speaking, they're the ones that are going to be contesting the headers in the boxes. So that's going to be less of a problem. If I'm finding myself in situations where I've got my 5'4" or 5'5" fullback trying to win a header in the box, that means that I've not set the team up correctly, because they shouldn't be having to do that. That's not the role that they play within the team. 2 big lads in the middle. With this Dortmund side, I've got a defensive midfielder who will drop back. He's also quite big, so he can try. He can help out. With things like defending crosses. It's made me think a lot more about how I set up teams. It's made me think a lot more about the tactical side of the game. There are certain things that I will always try and incorporate, and there are certain things that I will always try and ignore. And I think it would take, because it's based on experience, I think there's a lot of those things that it would take somebody, like, it would take a lot to talk me into considering bringing in things like distributing the ball to target forwards from goal kicks, because I'm like, it's so, in my experience, it's been so wildly ineffective, and I don't understand what it is that I could do to help support that. I've tried it. I've tried one big lad up front with, 3 lads in behind in like the attacking midfield role. I was like, well, if I'm going to use a target forward and he's going to be knocking the ball down, give him people to knock the ball down to. I just can't get it to work. So if there is a way around it and I'm missing out on something massively important, I would love to know. But for me, there's little bits and pieces I try and incorporate into all my tactics. And, the term influential gets thrown around a lot these days, but it's never directed at me. God, no. Can't imagine anything worse.
I think it's a lot harder for you, because I'm sort of sat here with someone who's done a one club, say, for the last 2 game cycles, and I think it's easier to implement, because you could make as much argument as, like, I throw around the term Callum ball, which is my tactic, but you could argue it is as much Slough's philosophy as mine, because I've been with them for such a number of years that it would just be, that's the way Slough play. Whereas, like you say, going into new clubs so regularly as you do within your save, that's a lot harder, because ultimately what you would have to do is you'd have to go in and go, right, hypothetically, let's say you play a tick-attacker style, and that is the way you like to play. You like to, very much, it's all possession based. If you then joined a club who had none of that, you had no sort of ball players at all, your defenders were no nonsense, you had the big man up front, you would have to have a major overhaul of that squad to be able to fit your style. So I think possibly the way you're doing it is correct to the game, to the way you play it for enjoyment. But I think that, in essence, is the problem with football management in the real world. I think this is why you see so many managers getting sacked. I use this example all the time of, let's say Jeb is managing a football club, and he comes in, he goes, right, chairman, I do not want these 5 players. They do not fit the way I play, but I want these 5 new players. Okay, so I want these 5 new players. So the chairman goes, look, I will do my best to sell them if I can, but we will get in your 5 players. The 5 players Jeb wanted, in they come, they fit his new style. Beautiful. The 5 he wanted to get rid of, they're not the best footballers, so he only manages to get rid of 2 of them. So there's 3 dead woods just swimming around. Unfortunately for Jeb, it doesn't go very well. And after a year, they've had enough of him and they get rid of him. Sorry, Jeb. And they go, right, we're changing and we're going to Rich now. Rich, in you come. And Rich says, right, brilliant. Well, you know, there's 5 players that Jeb wanted to sign. I don't want any of those. They do not fit the way I play. And also the 3 players that Jeb didn't want, I also do not want. So you now need to get rid of 8 players. However, these 5 players fit my new style. So the chairman goes, oh, good. Okay, fine. I'll bring in those 5 players. You're telling me to get rid of 8 there, Rich. I can only get rid of 2. So you've got 6 deadwood, and you've got, you know, and it just year on year on year, this keeps happening until you end up with this complete mismatch of about 3 or 4 different managers, their variety of styles, and it just doesn't work. And that is something, because how often now are we having a manager in the top level of football actually stay there for 5+ years? It just doesn't seem to happen anymore. You know, even managers like Claudio Ranieri won the Premier League and got sacked the next year. You know, and that like it's things like that you sort of go, how are managers actually able to properly sculpt a squad to play the way they want to play? Like with regards to my Slough Town team, I have from the off never played with wingers, because my fullbacks are my wingers. So they are very much my attacking width, and so I focus on the attacking attributes of my wingbacks, not the defensive ones. So defensively, they're actually quite poor, but they offer so much going forward. And that's not just the specific 2 I've got now. That's always been the case. From the Vanarama South all the way to now the Championship, I've always had that style of fullback. I've also had a defensive midfielder who can play on the ball, and I focus more on the fact that he's good on the ball than his defensive side, because in my eyes, the centre halves, and there's an awful lot of pressure on those 2 centre halves, but the centre halves are the ones who are doing my defending, and they don't need to be talented on the ball at all, because my halfback is going to drop in and do that for them, you know. And so I sort of sculpt it around that. I've enjoyed using a target forward for the vast majority of my saves so far. But I've now started moving more towards a bit more pace up front, because we've got to the point now after a couple of promotions where I've gone, actually, I think we need to have players who can counter. Because we're not going to be better than our opposition in a lot of occasions. So if I'm still affording myself these 2 attacking wing backs, I need to have players who out of nowhere can create, you know, go from defense to attack really quickly. And, you know, like Jeb mentioned, he watches a lot of Liverpool. He bases his style around sort of a Klopp way. In some ways, I do base, there's elements of Sean Dyche that I use within my management, because that's the football I watch week in, week out, being an Evertonian. And Sean Dyche has this misconception of he is a long ball merchant. He's not a long ball merchant. What he is, he's a very direct manager. So it's not necessarily, don't get me wrong, we do a lot of long balls, but that's not necessarily the style. The style is moving from defense to attack quickly. And it's almost like overriding certain positions. So like both of in the setup I have my halfback who obviously joins the centre halves, but then I have 3 central midfielders who are all on different roles, predominantly attacking roles. So basically, when I go on that attack through my wing backs, I then have another at least 2 players joining up with my strikers, and the box is flooded. Like it's flooded with players just so quickly. And I think a philosophy is something that is very, very difficult to implement. However, when you get there, it's an awful lot of fun. Like it's a really, really cool aspect of the game to be able to sort of say, this is the way my team play because this is the way I have implemented it. Because I think when I was a less experienced player of the game, if I went onto the transfer market and saw someone who was clearly a very good player, let's just go off star ratings, like a 4-star player who was available very, very cheap, I would always buy that player. It didn't matter what they were. It didn't matter, you know, if they fit in my system or not, I would always buy them. And more often than not, I then bring in a player who does not fit the way I play at all. He's really good at football, but it just doesn't work. Whereas now I'm much more sort of, I take my time over it. I might bring in a slightly worse player, but that player will fit my system a lot better than that more talented individual. And I think it's just another way of sort of learning the game, building yourself with that knowledge that you have learned. through creating a style of your own.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think as you say, you've got your cannonball, and how you've had multiple iterations over the last couple of years, especially in Slough. But again, I look back and because I've been in the streams, I've been in the chat for a fair amount of it, and again, I'm now struggling to remember a time where you've actually used wide players, but that's not something that I've actually clocked. Like, oh, that's interesting. He's gone super narrow with this. Ironically, with my Dortmund side at the moment, my formation, my system is narrow. I unashamedly lifted it from Jeb in the network save, because it's essentially it's a flat back four. Then you got one defensive midfielder, two narrow central midfielders, then two narrow attacking midfielders, and then one striker. And it's fantastic. It's so good. And it took a little while to tweak the player roles, and because I think that's a big part of it as well. It's not just the core of the system now. It's the specific player roles. Like Callum, you talked about target forwards. I've mentioned them as well. It's making sure that you've got the right players, the right roles, and also having the players to fit those roles. But I've got Mazzalas, I've got shadow strikers, I've got deep line playmakers all over and it's I think it's also those combination of roles that make it a little bit easier. I mean, Jeb, you touched upon it, it's the yellow arrows, isn't it? Because that's all we really used to have to go off. But it's now those specific player roles, and again, we touched upon it a few weeks ago, didn't we? Specific player instructions. Those have been game changers for me as well. I love those. And I think those player instructions are also things that I'm now trying to work into. It's been a very important thing with my Dortmund system, for example. I've got an attacking midfielder who is essentially, when you just put a player into your system with the attacking midfielder instruction, he's a blank canvas. And he's told to drift, he's told to get a little bit wider, he's told to cross a little bit more. He's almost like a winger. He will drift wide and he'll do, he'll play that way, but he starts off centrally, because if we're working, we're not specifically working the ball through the middle, because again, I find those instructions a bit too limiting almost. He can drift around, he can do all sorts of bits and pieces. And I love that. And it's having the flexibility of being able to give a player those specific instructions rather than having somebody centrally with a little diagonal yellow arrow pointing out towards kind of the corner flag. That helps when you're trying to implement these systems, when you're trying to implement that footballing philosophy. It almost expands on how you can do that. So it's, as somebody who's had a lot of different, Callum balls, what would you say the shortest amount of time that you've stuck with one has been over the last couple of years?
About half a game, I think.
Okay.
I had one. Yeah. Quite often when I'm switching between Callum balls, it's not going very well. So if I've I think there was one where I really threw in the towel and I just went, you know what? Let's just have fun and let's just attack teams. And so I put two centre halves, one defensive mid, and everyone else basically in attack, and we lost the game 7-1. So I mean, we did score. Which was something we weren't able to do before in previous iterations. But yeah, I mean, it's now to be honest with you, I now change a Callum ball if I'm changing like almost like like instructions, like not necessarily even moving positions or roles now, because I feel like I have really settled upon it, which is why. Like I sort of take pride in the fact that I feel like that is the philosophy as a manager that I bring in. I want the ball played round quite patiently at the back, but then when there's those opportunities, find them. And like I even go further with player traits with this. So if I bring in a younger player, I want that player to do exactly what I want within my style of team. So like a lot of my central midfielders will have tries killer passes on, because I want them to get the ball, head up, boom, go. My wing backs have both got and will always have cross from deep, because I want them to be at the earliest opportunity looking up and getting those crosses into the middle, because if the ball is in the box, you can cause issues even if you haven't got that big target forward. I think it was Sam Allardyce who said if you cross it in 100 times and no one's in the box, 1 or 2 times the ball will still end up in the back of the net, because there'll be some sort of miscommunication and it'll end up in the back of the net. And like I do think that is a big part of the way you have to sort of create these roles. And it's not as straightforward as, okay, he's a playmaker, he's going to be really good on the ball, put him in that role and he'll do all of that for you. He needs specific attributes and specific traits which will boost that further, and in the words of Nick Madden, give those small influences, small boosts to your team to then impact it, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean that's not the only thing. Yeah, it's not the only thing Sam Allardyce said, but
no, it is. It's the only one.
Oh, okay.
One pint of wine, thanks. Yeah. I mean, I did enjoy you adapting the Sean Dice philosophy last week because you just added a really gravelly voice for the entire day. It was a bit weird.
I don't know why that happens.
Yeah, get the ball. Yeah, there you go. Right, okay. I don't know. That's not Sean Dash. I don't know where I've gone. Oh God, this is right. Anyway, yeah. I think there is a bit. I've brought like different philosophy. I think the inverted winger and the inside forward has always been a big part of my game as well. Particularly if I've got a target forward, because it's literally they're the people who pick up the scraps from him. Particularly where I am with Sheffield United at the moment as well. Like, it's also when you find certain players and you want to find certain types of players. I seem to have, I don't know, it happened with Pescara last season, and then obviously happened with Wolves in the same season, I guess, because it's carried on. But I seem to have really nailed the average forward doing really, really well. I don't know why, but there's like Pescara that first season where I found an average forward who had, I think the highest attribute was about 13, but then everything else was like 9s and 10s. But he got like 65 goals in his first season. Same with Araujo. Araujo's not outstanding. He's got 16s for a couple of things, but he's just average across the board, and that seems to work. So maybe that is my philosophy. Find somebody really average and let them score loads and loads of goals. I don't know.
It could be. It could be. What a philosophy that would be as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. It has worked for you, especially the network save. You've gone through striker after striker after striker who have been at face value like, really, should he be here? And yeah, Araujo's one of them. Nelson Viper as well. Just scores goals for you for fun. It's been absolutely bonkers. And
I think it's having those
average footballers everywhere. Yeah,
the creative players behind. I think the advanced playmakers coming back has kind of come back this season. I found like central midfield on attacks kind of. It's still there. It still exists. It's still a bit OP, but actually, advanced playmakers have actually started to advance as well.
Oh God. No, it's true. Bye, everybody. Awful. Sorry. No, it's true. What's been really interesting, the thing I've really enjoyed about this conversation is that everybody has their own approach to it. I don't think, and we've said this time and time again, haven't we? Generally speaking, there's no right or wrong way to play the game. Everyone plays it differently. Everybody gets a different Football Manager experience. But at the end of the day, it's about how much of the game you want to explore. It's about what the game offers you that you actually want to invest time into. And I think, especially for me, the last 18 months, taking that time to look under the hood a little bit more, work at, creating my own, managerial tactic, philosophy, approach to the game, trying to implement it, especially again, this year has been even harder, implementing it with different clubs across the board. And, not to blow my own trumpet, but generally speaking, the longest I've spent at a club over the course of this save has been 2 years. I think that the average time I've spent at a club has been 2 seasons. And, for those people that are newer to the podcast, the objective of my save this year, is I'm taking charge of clubs that used to be very successful that haven't been successful recently and try and restore that. And across the board throughout the save, with the exception of, Wolfsburg, where I wasn't there long enough to do it because I jumped ship because I have no loyalty. It's worked. I've won league titles, or I've won competitions, or I've got teams back into Europe, and it's taken a couple of years, generally speaking, each time to do. I'm expecting there to be clubs where it takes longer, over the next few months of the save for sure, but trying to implement my style of football and, you know, try and turn the teams around, it seems to be working. And it's more rewarding to me than just having that plug-in 4-2-3-1 game and press. It's much more rewarding to do it this way, like doing it my way, than it is just to, you know, I don't feel like I'm having my hand held by the game as much when I'm doing those things. And don't get me wrong, the clubs that I'm managing, it's not like I'm taking, you know, clubs from, you know, the 5th tier of, you know, Finland and then, you know, getting them into Champions League. It's not that. I've not exactly, you know, I'm managing Dortmund at the moment. I've managed Ajax. I've done it with Chelsea. These aren't clubs that, you know, on paper it should be overly hard to succeed with. But at the same time, within the structure of my safe, within my own little private universe, these are clubs that have been consistently struggling for a number of years. So something has needed to change at the club in order to get the best out of the players they already had. In some cases, you know, shifting players on, getting new ones out of the club. But I feel like I've had a hand in it with each one of them, which has been enormously rewarding.
I think you touched upon it there. I think what these little things do is make the game more immersive and more enjoyable. And like I have quite a lot of people come in my chat on Twitch say, how do you do such a long save? Like I do a couple of years and then I drop off it. I'm just not interested. And I think that is the key. It's the key of creating that interest around the game. It's making you engage with it. Don't get me wrong, we've all dropped off saves. It doesn't matter how much you love Football Manager, there will always be points where you drop off saves. And I think as a streamer, it's a lot easier to continue it because you're not playing it all the time. Like when I used to play Football Manager, if I had a Sunday, I would wake up, I'd turn my laptop on, and whatever we were doing, Football Manager was on for the entirety of that Sunday, and then it would turn off at the end of the day. That amount of streaming would be about a month for me at the moment, you know, like for that 1 day's period. And so it is easier to be more engaged when you are playing it less. However, I do think, and it's not just from what we've talked about today, but it's from what we've talked about on previous episodes as well, about aspects of the game. And then when you see them working and when you see them actually coming into the game and coming into your team, because ultimately we are watching a simulation of a game. And when you can physically see an impact of what you have put in and it works, it's so rewarding, and it just makes it so much more fun. And I think that's why creating a philosophy, and if you are doing a longer save, it just makes it more interesting because it completely shifts how you scout, it shifts who you purchase, it shifts you know, you might actually alter certain players. You might bring in, like the style I've talked about, you might bring in a centre half who's a real ball player and go, I don't want my centre half to be a ball player, I want my half back to be a ball player. So then you're altering that player into a completely different role, and it just makes it a more engaging and a more interesting thing, because in my opinion it makes it a bit more real. And I think I've touched upon that before. I think the elements, it is a game. So, like, the reality is, like, I joked at the weekend with Scotty Davis about the fact that I've got Slough into the Championship after 10 years. It doesn't matter what Scotty Davis does. There's no way that could ever happen with a non-league club to be able to take them into the Championship in 10 years. The finances, all that jazz. But the elements of the realism that do work are things like this. They are things like the management style that you can bring in yourself.
And this is completely game-based, I guess. How many times does your actual philosophy change because the game changes? So, like the new patches and stuff like that. So, like, for example, let's say long throws are OP. So your whole philosophy was basically build everything around a long throw or corners and things like that. I think even on this game, 24, it might have been 23, but ball-playing defenders were rubbish. Absolutely awful. And now they're actually good again. Like, they can actually play the ball. They're the ones that always used to make the mistakes. They don't make the mistakes anymore. It kind of changed your philosophy on things. I'm looking at my Sheffield United save, and I'm thinking back to the way I started off with Morecambe. All right, I was in League 2, but I've always had a ball-playing defender in my centre-back partnership. Now with Sheffield United, I've got 2 ball-playing defenders, and they don't make many mistakes. So it's changed as the game has, like, adapted and got better and got rid of some of the bugs. So almost your end of cycle philosophy is completely different to your start of cycle philosophy.
But yeah, you are right. But then once again, I'd argue that's realism, because I think although the point on like the game changing, yes, okay, that's not real because it's game for. But then I suppose in some senses we do go through periods in football, and it's obviously over a longer period of time where it does shift. I mean, a ball playing defender was never really a thing 10, 15 years ago, but then certain managers have come in and altered the way people play, and then it sort of changes to that. And I think, yeah, you do have to take into consideration if a patch comes out and it also, but then it supposes how stubborn you are with the way you want to play the game and how the game plays, really.
Yeah, I've never been drawn towards, I suppose, the meta is, it's, which is a really weird word to describe us when you're talking about a game like Football Manager. I play a fair amount of EAFC, for example, and people talk about the meta in that, because that, and I was having this conversation on stream earlier in the week, that there is a meta. Somebody described games like EAFC as just an exercise in pattern recognition, which I think is a fair point. And there are players that play a certain way on those games that you're going to be significantly, it's going to be easier to play the game. You're going to have more success than if you try and use different styles of players. It's always going to be the way. There is, I suppose, when you break down a game like Football Manager, there is still going to be a meta. There are, and it's the 43-1 Gegenpress, I suppose. But it feels like a weird word to describe a game like FM to me. But I've also never necessarily been drawn to it. It's not, if somebody's like, oh, hey, look, here's this incredible, here's this system that's going to, I won 38 out of 38 Premier League games with Luton with this tactic. I've never really been drawn to that. That's not how I get enjoyment from the game, I suppose. We had, it was like Clates a few years ago, just dominating in PvP because he figured out the system. And then there was a little while you're playing in draft competitions, or you're playing online against people, and you would see the same, 6 or 7 people all using the same system, all using the same formation, and it's Clates' because that's what they know is going to win. I've never been drawn to that. That's not how I get enjoyment from Football Manager. So for me, makes me look at me up on my soapbox. It's never really been that much of an issue for me. If somebody was like, long throws are now game breaking, I'm not really that fussed about it. Certain roles placed together are game breaking. Cool. I'm not necessarily that fussed about it, because again, it's, for me, it's not just that, I'm not setting up a save with the objective of just dominating something for 2 or 3 years and then getting bored and then never touching the save again. It's, for me, I get enjoyment from, playing the game, experimenting, trying different things, trying different tactics, trying different play. That to me is a more enjoyable Football Manager experience than just somebody going, right, use this system, use this tactic, use this role, and you're going to score 7 goals a game. So for me, it's not really something that I factor into my FM experience, But like I say, there are no right or wrong ways of playing the game. If there are people that play Football Manager that know certain roles, certain tactics, give them a higher chance, a more chance for success, and they want to use them, fantastic. Live your best life. Do exactly what you want to do, because that's how you get enjoyment out of playing the game. For me, it's not necessarily the way that I play it.
Yeah, I think that's
Look
fair.
at me, up on my high horse. I'm going to climb down from it now. I'm going to climb down from my high horse because it's terrifying up there, and I'm getting vertigo. That was for a very last minute addition to the chat before we recorded the episode. I think that was an excellent question, Callum. Well
Thanks.
done. Well done, you.
Thank you.
Did it. You did it, buddy. well done. There was one other question I think I wanted to ask you both, fellas. Because look, I think we've covered Football Manager quite well today. I feel like we've done a good job. And I feel like we've got a little bit of time left. So there was another question I wanted to ask you both. Feel free to go into as little or as much detail as you would like to with this question, because based on the name of our podcast and based on who we are and based on what we do, we've covered the Football Manager side of things. But I think we should kind of address the T in FMT, because it's been a little while, So I just kind of wanted to know, how are you both? How's things? Callum? You all right, pal?
Yeah, no, I'm actually really good at the moment. To be honest, it's I think I mention it about 5 times a podcast. I'm a dad, and that has had a slight change to life. But no, it's got to a point now where I'm just loving it. Like it's really, really enjoyable. I think I'm in a lot better place than I was about 6 months ago. And it's just adapting, isn't it? It's it's shifting. It's understanding that your time is not your own anymore, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because it's about, you know, adapting and changing with that. So no, I genuinely I'm very, very good at the moment. Thanks, Rich.
Good. I'm glad to hear it, and it does show. It shines through. You know, just from conversations that we've had in Airbnbs as registered guests, you know, this time last year, you were telling me how excited you were about, you know, knowing that you were going to be a dad soon, and that was lovely. And then hanging out with you a year later, that's still very, very much the case, and it's really, really nice to see. It's a really, really lovely thing. So, I mean, that's always good news, and I'm really, really glad that that's the case. And it does get easier. It you know, like you say, it's adapting, in it. You know, I remember, I've got 2 children. I remember so little from the first year of both of their lives, because you're just trying to, you know, make it through the day sometimes, because young children are tricky at the best of times. But if you're enjoying it and you're having a really good time with it and you're happy, that's even better.
Yeah.
A friend of mine used to have a saying, especially because, again, she has 2 children roughly the same age as mine, and when they were both very little, you know, because there is pressure from things like social media to portray a certain, you know, lifestyle, or, you know, when, especially when you have kids, you know, her saying always used to be, and I love it, if at the end of the night everyone's fed and nobody's dead, you have done a really, really good job of parenting that day. Like that's all you can hope to accomplish. And I love that. I say it to myself, even now, I say it to myself multiple times a day. If everyone's fed and nobody's dead, you've done okay at being a parent that day. So no, that's really, really positive to hear. I'm glad things are okay, mate. That's really, really good.
Thank you.
Jeb, how are you, pal?
I've had a week of it. The when you go to like a big social event, you always have a post event come down and things like that. I think that was definitely present earlier in the week. The stuff that happened in Southport this week actually had a personal connection, but I'm not going to go too deep into that because that's not very nice. But like all the stuff that's come off the back of that is just crap, like absolute crap. Like it's just watching news and stuff like that, and doom scroll and the misinformation, all the things like that. It's just honestly, it's difficult to get out of that doom scrolling and the misinformation that's just being peddled around. I would ask, like, anybody that listens, always dig a little deeper into what people are tweeting. You'll find the real truth out quite easily. That sounds like some sort of conspiracy theory thing out. It's not. It's just there's a lot of people just immediately jumping on the bandwagon saying it's immigration. There's obviously all the stuff happening at the Olympics. And then there was, I don't know, it seemed to a few things seemed to hit me this week. And then one of them was, I was just scrolling through Facebook and saw like some collage pictures of a guy that I grew up with, and then it turns out he'd actually died suddenly, and I thought, oh god. And so Gary was basically I grew up on a street. Crazy, isn't it? But yeah, I know exactly. I grew up
A
in
street, not the streets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I grew up on the streets, the mean streets of Bear. But yeah, Gary was like a friend of a friend, and we basically played a lot of video games. I had a PC. There was a few people who had PCs. This is like the late 90s. Championship Manager 2 you could buy like for tenner. It was a couple of seasons old, and then 97, 98 came out, and that came out. And we used to all go around each other's houses, but we'd all have a separate, basically, multiplayer game of Championship Manager. And that was something that we grew up with, like Championship Manager 97, 98. We actually created Morecambe, put them into League 2. Somehow had Steve McManaman playing for them, I'm not sure. But yeah, it was just like crazy things like that. But it was one of those. It was somebody that I grew up playing Championship Manager with. Used to go around each other's houses. We had a big love of Monkey Island as well. And it was like acquaintance of acquaintance. It was always bizarre. Like I'd go to like Leeds Festival or Kendal Calling, and I'd just end up camping. I'd hear his voice, and he'd be somewhere just in the campsite. It was just like one of those random meetings you see. He was a really funny guy, really nice guy, and it's like it's such a shame. And it's like somebody, like I messaged one of the other guys that was there. Like I've not spoken to them for like 20 years, and I was like, do you know that formation of us playing Championship Manager all together and all things like that? I'm still doing that, and I'm doing a podcast with people, and it's like that. That's had a big impact on my life. And just to like said, just to think like that person's not there anymore. I guess it is part of growing up as you get older. Is like I joke I'm 24, I'm nearly 40, but like people now start to go away like completely, and that's a bit horrible. Yeah, it hit me a lot harder than I thought it would, and the stuff in Southport as well. But it's just like I don't know. It's trying to get out of that funk as well. I think one thing that did help, I sold my car, my old car.
Yes. Cha-ching.
I sent you guys the Facebook Marketplace thing, didn't I?
No, I don't think so.
No,
Okay,
no.
I'll send it you after this.
Please.
So basically, I had it on sale for the past 3 weeks, but also I've been that busy with work, I've not been able to respond. So I was selling on Facebook Marketplace. But it was just people just going, "Is this available?" Okay, cash. I'll give you cash right now. I was like, I don't want cash. I don't want cash for it. I've already got him. He's a cat. No.
Hey.
But also no, I don't want like thousands of pounds in cash. So no, like bank transfer if we're doing it. But then it's just constant queries. To the point where I've got a 20-second video of me just scrolling through all the messages I received about this car on Facebook Marketplace. So the guy came along, we sold it. It was great. Finally good to sell it. My favourite message interaction was somebody went, so the car was listed for $2,500. Most people coming in, I'll give you 1,800. Somebody came in and went, 700 quid, no questions asked.
And that's the one he sold it to.
Yeah, so yeah, 700 quid, no questions asked. And I was just like, what?
No, that's a question.
No. Yeah, so I'd done what? He just went, "What's your address? I'll be around there shortly." I was like, "You said no questions asked." Leaves the group. Bye. See you later. So yeah, so I got rid of that car. So that was quite nice. Watching the Olympics has been great this week as well. It's just been nice to actually sit down, really dinner, and just watch the Olympics. Like you end up watching bizarre sports. I mean, everyone talks about horsey dancing. That's always fun to watch. Like, to be fair, I've got a family connection with dressage and things like that. My sister's a big horse person. She's a giant horse.
She's a centaur. Why has this never come up before?
I forgot. Yeah, I forgot about that. But, yeah. No, she's a giant horse.
How does she wear jeans? Like just the back, like that. All...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I need to know. I've got this. This has just raised more questions.
But and then just like watching the gymnastics, BMX, and all things like that. That's been quite nice to watch. The athletics is here when people's interest peaks a little bit more. But yeah, I think it's definitely been a better back end of the week than it was at the start of the week. It's been difficult. I had the full intentions of streaming like 3 nights this week, and I've just sat there. I also, this is shout out to a former member of the pod, Alice. Started playing Crusader Kings 3.
Okay.
I should never have done that because it is the most difficult game to understand in the entire world. And also I get about 20 turns in, it's like, you've been killed. Cool. Right, great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Crusader Kings 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's nothing we all enjoy more than an overly complicated video game.
Overly complicated. And I'm playing it on very easy, and I just keep getting killed. or just get my entire kingdom like taken over. It's like, cool, that's the end of your dynasty. Right, nice.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'll try and understand more updates on that to come. But yeah.
Well, yeah, keep us.
It's been a nice distraction, but yeah, like I said, it's just it's difficult, and I think it's important now more than ever that there's people out there to watch, there's people out there to talk to. It was quite nice. I did put quite a long post in another Discord, and I got a couple of nice messages off the back of that. Just reaching out to various people, like I said, even reaching out to the people who are the friends of Gary who died, but it's getting responses and just chatting to old friends and stuff like that, and I think that's important. There's always there people to talk to, and I think it's always important to check in on people as well, just see how they are.
Absolutely.
As a previous episode title was, start by saying hello. Just like a simple hello can start off a conversation and open up. Yeah, so that's my update. Richard Charles Owens, how are you?
I've been doxed.
Sorry, Richard Charles Owens of 123 Fake Lane.
Fake Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all right, I suppose. That's my default response. Anytime anybody asks me how, yeah, I'm all right, I suppose.
Okay then. How are you then, Rich?
Yeah, I'm all right, I suppose. Yeah. No, I'm up and down. If I'm completely honest with you, at the moment, I'm up and down. I think you've touched upon it there, Jeb. I think there's been a lot going on in terms of, especially the media's response, or well, not the media, social media's response to a lot of recent events is awful, and I hate it. And there's been 2 or 3 times this week where I've been on the cusp of just deleting all of my social media, because I'm like, it makes me so sad, because like there have been people that I know and I've known for years, and I'm like, I like these people. These are friends, and then some of just the hate that's been pouring out of them, especially over the last week or so, for a number of different things, has just been really eye-opening. I'm like, I had no idea that that's the kind of person that you were. And that's sad, because I think I've invested time into friendships or building relationships with people. And then that it's, don't get me wrong, it's not the kind of thing that normally comes up. It's like, hello, how are you? Love to meet you. My name's Rich. Before we continue this conversation, are you massively transphobic? Like it's not an entry level question when you start to get to know people, but then it all starts to come out. You're like, oh, this is a bit bleak. And like you say, there are certain social media accounts that will just say awful things, and then people will jump on the back of it and people will believe it. And it's been tough out there for especially the last week. It's been a difficult week, and that's rubbish. But then again, for everybody, for every horrible, sad post, there's something that pops up that makes you laugh. Like say, the Olympics is on, and I love Olympics. I absolutely adore the Olympics, because again, it's just that level of investment in random sports or athletic events that you were aware that they existed, but you'd never give them the time of day previously, and then suddenly you get really, really into it. Like that clip of the Italian pole vaulter from yesterday, that knocked the bar down with a part of his body you wouldn't normally expect to knock the bar off a pole vault.
His fingers.
Piece of apparatus. Did you just say a rude word?
Elbow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Knocked it off with his elbow. Mamma mia, what an elbow.
Did you lick it afterwards?
He was licking it while he did it. That was the problem. It was David Nyholm. He's not even Danish. He's an Italian pole vaulter. I love that. Like my wife's granddad, he's crikey, he's well into his 90s now. He's an Italian pole vaulter. But no, I remember we went to visit him years ago, and he was so invested in the Olympics. And we were sat in their kitchen. We were sat in their kitchen, like my wife and I, having something to eat. And he just comes shuffling in. He was like, "Oh, just in case everybody there's an Italian girl who's doing very well in the shot put." And then he just shuffled back off. And then he come back half an hour later. I was like, "Oh, yep, there's an Ethiopian girl. She's doing very, very well in the long jump. If you want to come and watch, and back off you go." It's like, this is fantastic. I love me some Olympics. Absolutely love me some Olympics. And there was a wonderful screenshot. I put it in. I can't remember. I put it in one of the Discords. It was the lineups from one of the swimming events, and yes, there were 2 names together that everyone was like, "Oh my goodness gracious me, they should not have put those 2 names together." But it was the 2, because there was a certain disgraced film producer from America, and the 2 people's surnames spelt his name, but the ones above that also spelt out Canny Seaman, and then somebody just put a picture of Ant McPartland from Biker Grove with his eyes blinded by paintballs, and I was like, that's even better. So like,
also as a counteract, somebody said, so I sent that on to somebody else, and then they sent me it back. The actual person, so it said, "Can he see me? See Canny," and then the other person was called Seamanova, and just somebody said, "Somebody looking for the car in Glasgow."
See, these are the things, like you have to, you scroll through 10 minutes of just, rage bait and hatred and horribleness, but then that pops up like, oh, okay, we'll give it another chance.
Yeah.
So that's been tricky.
Yeah, it's been tricky, and there's been like I said, it's horrible comical stuff, but it's like the guy who got hit by 2 bricks, like just perfect, like slapstick comedy. I mean, could be more deserving of it, in my opinion. Probably a lot of people's opinion. And then it's like I think I posted in obviously our chat as well. It's like Love Island having to defend the Algerian female boxer. I mean, it's great to see that Love Island are the people that are coming out to do this, but it's just like the amount of hate that's gone around about that. That's been, and the amount of people just like misinformed, not even reading it. They're just reading that man hits woman in boxing. It's like, no, actually read what that is not the case in any shape or form. It's it's horrible, but it's to be fair, it's led me on the biggest blocking spree I've ever done on social media in a while. Like, it's just like, see you later, bye, see you later, bye. Just a lot of people don't need to see anymore. I think it's sometimes quite healthy to do that.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah. And then the other one I saw, and I'll share a link to this probably in the Discord, is somebody at a protest this week going, well, look at the Titanic. They were just like, yeah, what? Look at the Titanic. They had all those people on, and it sank, and that's what's happening to England. Just like,
and on that note,
these are the people making those arguments, and it's just like, yeah, there we are.
Yeah. Oh, it's quite incredible. They put people on a boat, and then it sank, and nothing else happened. Nothing else happened.
Yeah.
Quite incredible. No, it's been a difficult week for a number of reasons for quite a lot of people. So, but like Jeb said, it's one of the healthiest things you can do if things are tough is reach out to somebody, message somebody you haven't message a friend you've not spoken to for a couple of months. Like, get in touch, just reach out, have a look at your phone, go, right, who haven't I spoken to for a little while that I like speaking to? Drop them a message, say hello, have a chat, because it's as difficult as things can be, and as difficult as things are for a lot of people at the moment. There are people out there that care about you, and I think just spending 5 minutes of your day, just having a little, reconnecting, having a little chat with somebody can make things feel nice. And it's nice to feel nice. And it's, if you have the opportunity to do that, lean into it, because there's some good stuff out there. There's some good stuff. There's some good people, and reach out, connect with them, and hopefully it'll make you feel a little bit better. There you go. That's my takeaway from the situation.
And if you want loads and loads of messages on your Facebook Messenger, just sell something on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah,
you
that's
loads
it.
You get loads of people trying to connect with you.
Yeah,
no questions asked.
Yeah.
No questions asked. Yeah, long gone. My children of a certain age now. When your kids are between generally about 18 months and 4, when they do a lot of growing very quickly, they grow out of a lot of clothes. And long gone are the days of my wife being at work at the weekend and messaging me like, right, there are 17 bags of clothes scattered around our house. People are going to be knocking on the door at different times of the day. You have to hand them the exact bag that they need with the exact clothes in it. I haven't labeled any of the bags, but you have to try and figure it out. And I was her Facebook Marketplace patsy. That's who I was for years. You have to collect the money. You have to hand them the bags. No questions. Absolutely no questions. Not allowed to. Can't ask questions on Facebook Marketplace. Those days are long gone now. Makes me feel a little bit better. Bye, everybody. Before we go.
Oh my God, Rich's wife's a drugs kingpin. Right, anyway.
No, I know. How do you think I afford such wonderful things like this Sharpie? Nurofen. She gives people Nurofen. Callum, I believe before we go, just because we've spent, we need to address the balance, because we've tried to talk about positive things for a little while, and I think we need bringing back down to earth a little bit. Callum, I think there was a question that you wanted to ask Jeb and I just before we wrapped up the podcast.
Yes, it'll have to be a very speedy one.
We'll make it very quick. Or, well, we'll try to.
Right. Are you ready? So
I was
football,
born ready.
football game co.
It's back.
We'll go back and forward. On this one, it is current left backs in the English Premier League. Okay, so that is your topic, current left backs, and I do want this to be fast paced. You haven't got thinking time, which is why I'm currently giving you thinking time by extending this explanation. Okay, we will hold on. Heads or tails? Wait, I haven't got any coins. Hold on, there's a coin. Heads or tails, Jeb?
Heads.
It was heads. Congratulations. Would you like to go first or second?
Andy Robertson.
That's not first or second. I'm afraid you've lost the game. That is really shame. Okay, Rich, go.
Andy, no, wait. Okay, Luke Shaw.
Costas Tsimikas.
The Estupinan.
Digne.
Malacia.
Chilwell.
I was about to say Ben Chilwell. You absolute swine. Gvardiol.
Ake.
Rico Henry. Henry? Henry, yeah.
Brentford.
Destiny awaits you, doggy.
Oh, that's a really, really good one. Okay, what clubs haven't we talked about yet? We haven't talked about Calafiori.
Tyreek Mitchell.
Damn it.
That was a quick backhand return there.
Wasn't it though?
More tennis.
More tennis.
He's just delaying tactics.
I know.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Congratulations, Jeb. You are this week's winner.
Feel free to list all of the Premier League left backs that I haven't mentioned, but you've only got 5 seconds to type them all out, everybody. So there you go. That's one for the audience. There we go. Thank you for that, Callum. I felt good about myself, and now I feel silly.
Perfect.
Good. Balance has been restored. Fellas, it's been an absolute pleasure being back. It's a shame we're not all in the same room again, but, can't have it all, can we? Some of us weren't prepared to drive to Slough this morning, but, we made do. We made it work. Just before we go, very quickly, Callum, if you would like to tell the people where they can find you over the next week doing some content, where can they find you doing that?
They can find me over on ycallum on YouTube and ycallum on Twitch.
Beautiful. Go find him at both of those things. They're both very, very good. Jeb, if you're going to be doing some streaming at some point over the next week, where can people find you doing it?
Twitch.tv/Jebaroo. I am on 999 followers.
Quick, unfollow him.
Yeah, you know what to do. Everybody unfollow him. Yeah. Bring him back down to earth.
Because that's exactly what you did to me, Jeb. I've remembered when I got to my milestone, you unfollowed. I'm just going to be waiting.
Yeah, just poised, ready. There you go. So
thanks. I want one person hello to Callum this week. That's something I won't be messaging.
How about you, Rich, son of Gloin?
You can follow me and my axe. Twitch.tv/RichOwensFM. There you go. You should come and hang out. We're going to have a good time. One very, very quickly before we wrap up as well, keep an eye on our social media over the next few days as well, because there might be a podcasty based announcements to make. Are you adding more time for me to think of a left back? Is that what we're doing?
No.
Okay. Sorry.
It's very cryptic. You won't understand. But
I got confused. Yeah, keep an eye out because there may well be some announcements.
For the benefit of audio listeners.
No
benefit. Raising a forefinger. I don't know what. No, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to go and watch the Fantastic Four. I'm not.
Which one? Which awful version of it are you going to watch?
Which
the first one or the second one or the
so many to choose from. Which god awful version of Fantastic Four?
For context, listeners, it's now 11:59. So I said to the lads, I cannot. 12 o'clock is literally the latest I could go, and It's literally 11:59 right now. It's 12 now. Right. Goodbye, everyone.
Callum has ruined my sign off. Thank you all so much, everybody. We appreciate you all. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.
Stop
Hope you're
wave.
the podcast.
I wave, not you.
And we'll catch you on the next episode of Football Manager Therapy. Take care. Love you lots.
Yo, I'm waving.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm actually waving this week. I'm not lying.
Ding 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 ding. Let me dead.